Finance is the language of the elites. Money, well, money is energy.
What the does that mean, Kobe Bryant?
In a world where you are losing more freedoms than ever and propaganda is melting your friends and family, you have but two choices. One, you can wake up, or two, you can remain a bot. In this video, Luke Belmar breaks down how money works and why most of you are thinking about it incorrectly. We explain how to get Wi-Fi wealthy. Luke also shares the #1 investment you can make, and he breaks down exactly how you can acquire freedom in the middle of this digital revolution. Mr. Belmar, I appreciate you having this conversation.
Thanks for having me, G.
Yeah. So why don't we just get right into this? You've been having yourself a year. You've been politicking, networking with some very powerful people. Explain to my audience, like, what is real money?
Money, so first of all, we need to understand the current form of money. So you and I both understand that we are currently living under a fiat system. So the fiat system was introduced through the Federal Reserve Act in 1931, which was to privatize the issuance of money.
Mm-hmm.
In 1971, we pull our entire gold standard and our entire dollar, remove it from the gold standard in 1971. Ever since then, money no longer has the same definition that it used to, which was a store of value. Money, in order to be money, needs to be a store of value, needs to be a hedge against inflation, potentially, and it has to be a means of exchange, right? It needs to be a store of wealth. But the US dollar has not done that, because since the US dollar was created, its purchasing power is down 99%. So what is money, right? Money in its current form right now, money is debt. Everything that's in your bank account, everything that is in my bank account doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the US government through debt that ultimately belongs to the issuer, whether it's a bank, whether it's the International Monetary Fund, whatever it may be, whoever they pull their loans from, most likely the New York Fed. So when people look at their bank accounts and they have this ego-driven response to the money that they have, it's because they don't truly understand money or how to become wealthy. In my opinion, and I'm not at that status yet where I would say my opinion is of high regards, but I would like to state that the people that I've interacted with are either billionaires or have kind of transcended the 9-figure bracket.
Yeah.
Consider money to be more than just the paper that we circulate.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what we consider your modern monetary policy in a nutshell. People need to basically go study those dates and that information.
So where do you start getting into real money from like a net worth perspective?
So first, money is not real, to answer that point, but to convey wealth,
Mm-hmm.
right? What is wealth? In my opinion, wealth is going to be found in multiple places. First place it's going to be found is in the assets that you hold. Now you're going to hold 3 types of assets. You're going to hold active income producing assets, you're going to hold yield bearing assets, and you're going to hold assets that either appreciate or depreciate. That's the 3 categories whereby something sits. Either something goes up in value, down in value, or produces some sort of yield or return for holding that asset. Most wealthy people, they put their capital to work.
Yep.
And they put it to work through investing into tools and into resources that are going to allow them to multiply that money. In crypto, it could be staking your USDC. In real estate, it could be buying a multi-home and whatever, renting it out, or Airbnb, whatever it is. That is how you're seeing a lot of successful people move their money to produce more
income.
money.
Mm-hmm.
So money's debt, which means you have to get out of debt. But you get out of debt by getting into it, which is fucking weird. But that's how the entire system's convoluted. And the reason the system's convoluted is because it's literally designed to confuse people. Something that I say nowadays, Rob, is finance is the language of the elite.
Finance is the language of the elites.
Back in the day, Latin.
I like that. Finance is the language of the elite. That's
Back
good.
in the day, Latin, if the Catholic Church wanted to share something regarding the Bible, they didn't have it in English.
Yeah.
So the peasants, the common folk, they wouldn't understand. They had to rely on the Pope and on the church for them to receive the message from God regarding what they could do. Same thing nowadays. What does the dollar say? And who do we trust?
God.
In God we trust. So this entire schematic, this entire scenario is literally designed to confuse people. So I'm supposed to get rich by getting into debt? How does that even make any sense? Because that's exactly what money is. So if you want more money, you need more debt.
Yep.
Now, the debt doesn't necessarily mean you go to the bank and you pull debt, but it means that the relationship that you have with money is a relationship of not hoarding, but utilizing it to create more money, which is the concept that I talked to you about, like the garden effect and the entire mentality behind what money actually is. Money, when you break it down to its most common denominator, is energy that is borrowed. What do I mean by this? Let's say you have a product, right? People have to work for that money. They have to input energy into receiving that money, that then they expend that energy to purchase your product. In essence, they are taking the energy that they
It's
created
transferable energy.
and transmuted it to you
Mm-hmm.
in return for a product. What you've done, in this case, let's say we do e-commerce, or you run a subscription product, or you run a high ticket offer. All these things require X amount of time to create, but the amount of energy that you're going to be receiving is going to be a lot bigger in multiples. So I started viewing money like the Chinese view money, and they view money simply as a transfer of energy. So it's no longer a management of wealth, it's a management of energy. And your goal is to multiply energy. Now, the second law of thermodynamics dictates that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed.
Mm-hmm.
So your goal is to figure out, how can I transform this amount of energy to produce more energy for
Mm-hmm.
me? And now the equation is no longer about who has more money, it's about who can manage the most amount of energy input to create the most amount of energy output.
And does it get easier when you have more energy? When you have, it does, right?
Yes, but it's also kind of like trying to manage a hurricane.
So why don't you think any of this is taught in school? Like I've always said, you have to learn the rules to the game because it is a very complicated game. But if you want to create wealth, well, this is the prerequisite. In the real world, graduation is simply freedom. Let's dive into how Luke is playing the game right now and the foundations in which everyone should be building upon. Most importantly, we are about to break down the most important investments you will ever make. And that, my friend, is in yourself. So on that, explain your current philosophy, because I think it's beautiful. You've made a nice chunk of money, like you don't have to be doing this, right? But you're starting to see how the world works, you appreciate all these things, and you've talked about equity and leverage, and we're at such an interesting time with, content distribution and personal brands and all these things. So how do you think about maximizing this opportunity that's in front of us? Because I mean, it really isn't, like, the forces that be are getting stronger, but at the same time, the opportunities are seemingly limitless. So how do you think about maximizing that?
I would say it goes back to the energy, right? So the money that you're making, if you want to go into personal brand and you want to build, you need to perceive yourself as a business. You can't perceive yourself as an individual.
So Luke Belmar thinks of himself as a business.
As a corporation.
Mm-hmm.
So Luke Belmar is a corporation.
Mm-hmm.
The reason Luke Belmar is a corporation is because the US perceives my corporation and my personal entity as the same exact thing. They perceive me as a person, right? As an individual entity. So I want to be running everything through my organizations, and what do? The entire premise is to be investing in myself. So all the energy that I'm receiving, I'm not investing into building a product, into building a company, into building SaaS. No, I'm investing it into building myself.
Yeah.
And by doing so, who's going to compete? So if I'm out here investing $500,000 into myself every single month, whether it's personal development, health, distribution, branding, whatever it may be, who's actually doing that? There's not a lot of people that are out here spending $500,000 a month actively understanding that they are a business worth investing in.
Yeah.
Right? They want to create this fairy tale dream of, I'm going to invest in a business, I'm going to build a business, I'm going to go VC, I'm going to go invest in all these founders, but I'm not willing to invest in myself.
Right.
It makes no sense. I think a part of the equation, going back to like, what is that metric of wealth? I divide it into 4 categories. The first one, so it's the 4 quadrants of wealth: health, wealth, love, and happiness. Love can be translated to relationships. Health is understanding that your physical condition and your mental condition is the tectonic plate on which everything else lies. If you don't have health, but you have family, you have wealth, you have relationships, you can't have any of it because you can't enjoy it because you have no foundation.
Right.
So before we even get into money, use the energy that you're creating, right, to get yourself healthy, because that is part of money.
Yeah.
A sober mind, a clean body, a clean operating system, and you know this as well, it's like a computer. A computer full of viruses is not going to run the same way as a computer that's just been debugged.
Yep.
So your goal is to get debugged, because from the moment you were born to the moment, basically to the present moment, you've been bugged.
And
You've been programmed. You have all these viruses, all this information, all this exterior information coming and telling you what reality is. And it's those things that you need to tap into through energy, invest in yourself to deprogram from it.
And when you say that's the basis of what you're trying to do now, you're trying to help people debug, more or less? Because it's very hard.
It's super hard. It's not my job to debug. My job is to live a life that people look at and they're like, that's a life that I want to live.
Ask yourself why you're not here, why you can't live this life. I wish you were here. It'd be fun.
Not a gimmicky bullshit fake life.
Yeah.
It's a life that's based on foundations and underlying principles that are unchanging through the times. So what are some foundational principles in my organization, for example? Dope shit. I don't do anything that's not dope.
Foundational principle 1, dope shit.
Dope shit.
I love that.
Dope shit.
Yeah.
I won't do, if it's not dope, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah.
I'm not in the business of corporate, I'm not in the business of manual, and all this stuff happens inside my organization, but not me.
Yeah.
Dope shit. Like, I will not touch it unless it's cool. And that's the entire premise on which you need to start doing stuff that you like.
That's how you build a brand
Like,
too.
the fuck you doing out here building something that you don't enjoy? Why, for money? Like, does that make any sense whatsoever? No, it doesn't. So once you have health in check, which is where you should be inputting your energy, right? All you can focus is input. You can't focus on the output. You can't focus what the universe is going to give you. You can only focus on the input. So once you got health in place, then you go to wealth, which is the next plate, which is money, finance, and your ability to take care of yourself on a materialistic level. Once you get that taken care of, the game begins.
Yeah.
Which is what? Make enough money to be able to provide for yourself full time, to be able to focus on yourself full time. That's the premise of the game. The premise is, how do I get out of the game really, really quickly so that I can focus on debugging and deprogram so I can become a better person?
Yep.
And most people, they make the money. Let's say, you see all these kids that like drop ship and they'll make $1 million. Because it's not hard that you can make $1 million drop shipping. But the thing is, can you make $30 million drop shipping? Can you make $1 million every month? Very difficult. You shouldn't be utilizing that money and going and buying an AP or going and buying a Gucci belt. You should be utilizing that money to invest into yourself so that you can build a garden-like business that'll let you produce more energy, and you utilize that finite energy that you've created initially to create more eternal producing energy. So you need to focus on wealth. Wealth has to do with your understanding of what we talked about, how money works, how finance works, how the law is written, what your Bill of Rights are, understanding that you need a legal team set with you, you need to
how accounting works,
team,
like
everything set in place. That is wealth. Once you have wealth in check, you need to make sure that your relationships and your spirituality are not in the back burner, which is very easy to neglect. Once money comes in, it's very easy to neglect family. It's very easy to neglect your spirituality, which are the two elements that I want to create wealth to be able to nurture in my life. Like, I want to make a ton of money to be able to spend time with my friends and my family, to be able to spend time with God, and to be able to spend time doing the shit that I love. That's the whole point. I don't want a big company that all I get at the end of my life is a big plaque on the name of the building. Fuck that shit, dude. Do you know how many kings, emperors that you can't even name have been throughout the ages that have worn silk clothes and sat on gold thrones, and you can't even pronounce them, you can't even remember them, because everything is fleeting. So the shit that I'm building, I'm not building it for this person, that person, this person. I'm building a garden in which I can reside.
Elaborate more on the garden piece, because I thought that was beautiful. You summarized that earlier with that analogy, and I just love for everyone to hear that breakdown and how it relates to your enterprise.
Yeah, so we talked about like two ways of making money, right? Hypothetically, let's consider dollar bills. Every Benjamin that you can picture, consider it a butterfly. There's two types of ways that you can capture butterflies, aka making money, whether it's in the natural world or whether it's in the financial world. The first way is by creating a net. You build a net and you're gonna go and swing. But the thing is, you have to chase after the butterflies because they're running from you. So people out here saying, oh, I'm gonna chase the paper, I'm gonna chase the paper. You hear it on the rap songs, I'm gonna chase the bread, I'm gonna chase the bread. You chase shit that runs. You don't chase shit that comes. It doesn't work that way. So the first part of the equation is really understanding at a macro level that your relationship with money can't be a relationship where you're always chasing it, because that means you're not in control. So there's two types of ways of making money. You can either swing and catch as many butterflies as you want. It doesn't matter how big you make the net.
A lot of people just try to
automate the net.
Build
They're swinging the net. They're still building a net. And unless they swing, there will be no butterflies. And that's where people fuck up, is they spend all of their money building the net instead of building the second wealth approach, which is building a garden. And this is a garden where you build a water stream, you build a flower bank, you build the trees, you set the soil. You build a garden that does what? Attracts butterflies to come and live and inhabit where you've created.
Absolutely.
So your goal is to create ecosystems and environments where money comes. And you do that by providing value, by understanding that you need to become a certain type of individual that understands how to produce money and understands how to produce value in an ecosystem. And that is something that you just can't cheat. You can't lie. You can't gimmick your way through that process of creating a garden, because the butterflies won't come. You can't fake the butterflies coming.
So what does that look?
That's the ultimate thing, where it's like either you swing or you build the garden. And building the garden, brother,
it's much harder.
It's much harder, and it takes
a long time.
This is where you lose a lot of people. They are scared to look themselves in the mirror every day and say, I have a job to do. I have to sow the fields. If you've made it this far, well, guess what?
you likely have what it takes. Let's talk about tapping into the digital revolution.
And then what kind of specific, like what business models do you love out of that, in today's world, out of that garden?
Yeah, so there's a couple business models that I think are really good. So there's 3 types of ways to make money. You have your physical products, your digital products, and your services. That's you can probably encompass almost any business model into services, physical products, or digital products.
Yep.
First, you need to figure out which is the lane that you want to penetrate depending on where you are in your level of expertise and where you are in your level of capital or ability to pursue a business. I tell people, hey, I just want to give people kind of like a more general understanding before I tap into kind of like how
of course
these things work in my business. So you have your digital businesses, for example, you have your physical businesses, and then you have your services. The easiest one to start up, but the most tiring and potentially the most exhausting would be your services, right? Everything that you have to input is just sweat equity. You just have to put in the time and you have to be good at sales.
Yep.
And you have to have obviously a service that you can sell to people that people aren't gonna shit on you for. That's the easiest to start if you're poor. Once you go from there, my next process is going into physical products. Why? Because you want to deal with supply chain, you want to deal with customer service, you want to be dealing with quality assurance, you want to be dealing with product testing. Like, you want to get your hands in product. It's extremely difficult and it's a little bit more capital intensive, but if you've gotten some capital from your services, transfer them over, build a business. Then the most appealing one, which is the one that right now, to answer your question, is where we're focused on the most with Capital Club, is your digital services. The thing with digital services is you don't have inventory, you don't have overhead when it comes to a supply chain, you don't have to deal with chargebacks when it comes to product quality, you don't have refunds, you don't have a product gets shipped to the wrong address. So the margin for error is a lot smaller, and the ability to upstart something and get it rolling is a lot more efficient. So right now, Capital Club is focused on the digital revolution. And the digital revolution is something that I believe is going to be taking place over the next 100 years. I don't think it's a 5-10 year thing. I think the digital revolution is going to be a revolution as to how we perceive reality in and of itself, how we navigate the world on a day-to-day basis. People are not ready, bro. People are not ready for what the world's going to be. I mentioned to you back in the late 1900s when samurai warriors, they had their samurai swords banned. Right? That shit was like never in history.
Yeah.
Did somebody come to you and tell you you can't have your sword?
Yeah.
But all these rules and regulations that come into place are doing what? Are taking people's freedoms and people's
one by one.
And people's ability to do their thing. Now, if you can tell me that a samurai that, based off of his honor code, commits sanpaku and rips all of his guts, doesn't have the wherewithal and mental sobriety to keep his sword put away, you're an idiot, because he does, clearly. So now you're in a situation whereby you need to start doing business in models and in niches and using technology to leverage the physical freedom that's been taken away from you, but that you still have in the digital space. And that is where the digital revolution comes in, is that this entire internet space, it's like moving to California in the beginning of the gold rush.
Yeah.
It's like there is
exactly
no rules,
what it's like.
there is no rules,
the Wild West.
There is no territory, there's Indians, there's killers, there's everything's out there, but there's also opportunity.
Yep.
And it's in that opportunity with no centralization, with no like crazy governments coming in and wanting to impose their stupid rules on you, or the US coming and being like, well, you can't stake tokens because you're a US citizen and we want to protect you. Yet they tank the stock market 90%.
Yep.
And they inflate all the prices at the grocery store and they make your money worthless, but yet they care about you. You want to be able to play in jurisdictions
they care
and
about
in
you.
niches, right? Where you're not affected, where your freedoms cannot be ultimately destroyed. That's why you have to be able to move in a vertical way to diversify your risk, not diversify your risk in assets, but diversify your risk and exposure. And that means that you need to do it in a place where you can move quickly and efficiently and cheaply. And that's the internet.
Have you read The Sovereign Individual?
I haven't.
It's a fantastic book by Peter Thiel, put me on it. And basically, guys wrote it in the 80s, and they predict the rise of digital money that's outside of the jurisdiction of governments. And sovereign individuals, which is a certain status of wealth, they will simply opt out of oppressive government. And governments will continue to get more oppressive, and the sovereign individuals will continue to flee.
They have to, and that's the thing, is they have to, because based on modern monetary policy, they have to become thugs because they have debts to pay.
Yep, that's absolutely right.
The United States right now, every single year, they pay $1 trillion, based on current inflation rate, they pay $1 trillion in interest.
In interest alone.
In interest. They can't even begin to repay their principal. So what do they have to do? They have to become thugs because they need to extort more money in order to be able to pay their bills.
Yep.
If not, they default. And what happens with the default? It's not that the US is going to default and the US is going to collapse and go to nothing. Is that there's so many economies and there's so much economic movement movement that is grounded on the faith of the U.S. dollar. That if the U.S. dollar cannot manage and cannot work, you have
Send
you
everything.
have a big issue that's beyond the United States. People are like, oh, the U.S. dollar will fail. Let the U.S. dollar fail. Dude, if the U.S. dollar fails, the entire economy, half of the globe, fucking shuts down instantly. You want to go to Venezuela? They use dollars. You want to go to Argentina? They use dollars. You want to go to the places where shit's really fucked up and you can't trust your local government? They use dollars.
Yep.
What do you think they're gonna use? Something else? They're gonna come and use Swiss francs? No, motherfuckers, they know that the dollars they can move in and out, they move it quickly.
Yep.
So it's not gonna go anywhere. And I think that as it becomes stricter, as it becomes more difficult to move, as it becomes more difficult to become a sovereign, autonomous individual, the internet is a place
It's the great
that's gonna give you
equalizer.
the equalizing factor. It's the equalizer. And I think that that's where people need to be focusing their attention.